Here is the first map of London Tube. When a few independent railways merged into one system, the first map was published in 1908. And it looked like this. It was accurate in terms of geography, but very hard to find your way around. Station names had to be written in a small text, often at odd angles, so they could be fitted in between the twisting lines of railway. As the network of underground railways grew, it became increasingly difficult to fit all the stations on the map. At some point, the full map looked like this. In 1926, a map maker, Fred Singamore, improved the tube map by allowing himself some artistic license with the routes representations. And it started to look like this. This map no longer represented the tube shape of London, the true shape, the true geographical locations and shape of London, and the true distance between stations was not reflected either. It could not be overlaid with a street map, so it was harder to understand where you were in London. On the other hand, it allowed more stations to be represented and allowed the larger text to make it more user-friendly, as we would say now. The man who created the view of the tube map we know today was named Harry Beck. He was an engineer of the Underground Electric Railways Company of London. In the late 20s, he lost his job with the Underground because of funding cuts. With some spare time on his hands, he decided to tidy up the tube map. Using his words, he was trying to achieve strengthening the lines and experimenting with diagonals and inventing out and evening out the distance between stations. So in 1931, he finished drawing his first tube map based on these principles. Although Beck's map had been entirely a personal endeavor and personal initiative, he was encouraged by friends to send it to the Underground Company for consideration. After several attempts and a few refusals, the company agreed to buy the design from him, and I learned recently that they paid him £10 for this work, which is an equivalent of about £1,000 now, to be fair. This was the result familiar to all of us today. Technically, it cannot be even called a map because it doesn't represent real geography. It is a diagram, but everybody calls it a map anyway. So the journey from the first map to this diagram was very long and fascinating. The journey from geographical accuracy and truthful presentation, truthful perfection of something to something that is inaccurate, but much better and easier to use. This is a great, great example of when imperfection or inaccuracy is a key to success. God blessed them and said to them, "Be fruitful and multiply." This is the blessing God gave both to all the creations, the fish, animals, and people. Nechama Leibovich, the Torah scholar and quite a famous teacher as well, noticed that although all received this blessing, only people had an important addition to it. Fish and animals, she said, are granted the power to be fruitful and multiply as well. So everybody has been given a power to be fruitful and multiply. This is everybody's blessing, everybody's ability. People, however, besides being given the power to be fruitful and multiply, are especially told by God about their dominion and and they became conscious of their power. God's blessing was just a fact about the rest, just the fact about their ability for animal creation, but a conscious knowledge with regard to people. It is the knowledge and understanding of power that distinguishes people from animals, according to Nehemiah Leibovich. In the words of Rabbi Akiva from Pirkei Avot, happy are people since they were created in God's image. It was by special act of love that it was made known to them that they were created in God's image. Having the power to do something without realizing it is an attribute of the animal world. What makes us people is an understanding and consciousness of our abilities and potential to either build or destroy. In practice, it means one thing. If you can do something and are aware of your ability, you can choose whether to do it or not. In other words, what makes us human is the ability to overcome our instinct, be conscious of our powers, and the ability to choose not to act when we can. From this perspective, the story of creation, and especially the story of Adam and Eve, becomes the answer to the question, what does it mean to be a human? Let's look at Adam and Eve in more detail. Dr. Joel Hoffman wrote a book, The Bible's Cutting Room Floor, where he included many stories that didn't make it to the Bible. We call such stories apocrypha, literature from the same period, or maybe about the same characters even, but that was not included in the canon of the Hebrew Bible. This is how Dr. Hoffman explains the purpose of this literature. Bible, he writes, was never meant to exclude the other writings completely. Just as the permanent collection at a museum doesn't imply that an item in storage have no value. And just as a window display in a store isn't intended to devalue the rest of what the store offers, the Bible was meant to highlight some contents, not to reject all the others. In fact, many of the scrolls were excluded simply because there wasn't enough room for them in the codex. This could have been the rationale behind an omission of the apocryphal book entitled Life of Adam and Eve, which picks up the story of the first human beings just as the things get interesting. When they're expelled from the Garden of Eden, we don't know much about them. What happened to the couple after they left the Garden of Eden? Did Adam forgive his wife? Did they stay married? What was it like for them when one of their sons killed the other? What happened to the serpent? And so on. So many questions. So in one of the chapters of this book, of this apocryphal book, Adam and Eve tried to return to the Garden of Eden. In fact, they spent the entire book regretting their decision, their mistake, and trying to fix it, trying to ask for forgiveness, trying to find the reason. They are not happy in the book. So they tried to return to the garden, but on the way they met Satan, the devil-like character who appears in a few other books in the Bible, who was behind the serpent story, as we learned it, and who orchestrated the exile for Adam and Eve. This is the moment. What did we ever do to you? Adam and Eve asked him. The devil explained, the Satan explained, that the problems began when God created humans, because humans were created in the image of God. The angel Michael came and had the human bow down before God, because even being in the image of God, they were not God. So God was higher. Then Michael, or Michael, the angel Michael, summoned all the other angels and had them bow down before the newly created human. before the new image of God. But Satan refused to bow down to a younger creature, claiming that it was improper of the old to serve the young. Other angels heard the devil's words, and they too refused to bow down. So God grew angry and ordered that Satan and these other angels be cast down to the earth as a punishment, while he ordered that Adam be put to the garden as reward. In other words, it was just jealousy. In other words, at the core of the story, Adam and Eve didn't do anything wrong to deserve the exile. It was the condition of being human that caused it. In the words of Dr. Hoffman, to be humans is to work for a living, to endure pain, to live in exile, to long for what was, to wonder why we suffer, and if we are lucky, ultimately to understand that our suffering is simply a part of the universe, which inherently contains both good and evil. In the book, Adam and Eve never overcome the surprise of living and shock of living in exile after their expulsion from the garden. They always wonder what they should have done differently. Always asking these questions, they live an unhappy life, unsatisfied, always trying to come back to the careless life in the garden, similar to what adults want. Adults remember the childhood as a careless time and want to come back to it when everything was taken care of by their parents. But while they're doing it, life is passing by. They're so focused on the perfect world of the past, the Garden of Eden, the place that they were never meant to stay forever, that they cannot see happiness and positive sides of the world around them. Sometimes we need to accept that hard work and overcoming difficulties is a part of a happy life, not an impediment to it. Life has both good and evil. Happy moments and suffering, one cannot exist without the other. We have a choice, either to strive for ideal, look for perfect answers and never be satisfied, or have a poetic license, sometimes use imperfections and inaccuracies for our benefit, draw straight lines even though it is not accurate, and focus on what makes us happy and what helps us and others. Accepting imperfection is not only the inescapable part of being an adult, but the only way to live a happy life. Life is only full when it has both evil and good, darkness and light, failures and ideals. This Shabbat Bereshit, we can find one place where we can make this world a bit better,